What's up, everybody? We are back with a video that I promised, and it is the 4-2-3-1 narrow, but also the 4-2-3-1 wide, and also the 4-4-1-1, both the one with the striker and the midfield one with the cam. And that's because they all have the same settings, right? The way I use them. Now, what I certainly recommend is all videos is you take my tactics, you can start with them, but then go into a practice area, whether it's a local game or an AI game, or casual offline, whatever. Or if you want to take it to ranked and test it, you can. But then you start tweaking the settings, both tactical and duties, individual player duties, to suit how you play. The initial settings, though, across the board, doesn't matter if one person's using a 4-2-3-1 wide, one person's using the narrow. They're the exact same settings. The difference, as you can see in the back, is simply instead of a striker, it may be a cam, right? Instead of CDMs, it may be CMs. That's really it. The starting position of the wing midfielders is all essentially the same. Now, I will say, once I work Son into, being able to play cam, which he just needs a skill point, then I add one more level to his alternate positions, and he'll have striker left wing, or he already has him, he'll add cam. And it just adds so much more dynamic options than you would otherwise have. Like I did it with Mbappe. Without that, Mbappe and Son, without them being able to play cam, it just limits you sometimes. And why the 4-2-3-1 narrow would be my first choice, even though these other ones are great alternates. And they could be, your first choice. But the reason why I like the 4-2-3-1 narrow, and we'll do that as soon as Son gets that alternate cam position, is because the natural starting position of your wingers is a little bit closer together, okay? So obviously you can tweak the settings, which is what I do, and you'll see here shortly how, to make those two wing mids close in a bit, but especially with the L1 triangle, cross nerfed out of the game. And I see some players using it, and they might be successful 2 out of 10 times or whatnot, but go ahead, that's fine. But for the most part, it's nerfed out of the game, so I want my wingers, just like before that glitch, if you saw my tactics videos, I want them working that seam between the center backs and wing backs, okay? So that's why I like the 4-2-3-1 narrow the most out of these setups, and I will be going to that. However, in the meantime, this is how we're going to start. And the reason why it's a 4-4-1-1, and then in my attack I have the 4-2-3-1 wide, is because Son can only play striker. He can't play cam, and I want him in that. Well, he could play winger, but I'm saying in that central role. I don't want Mbappe in there. I have in my most attacking, and Son does good to cut in, but he's got that 5-5, so I like him in the center. I strongly recommend that withheld striker or cam, you get someone with a 5-5, because you're not always going to be cutting into the same direction. You're going to be going left or right, which means shooting with both feet, okay? For instance, if I have Messi in there, he'd be great, but all he has is that left foot. He's got a 3-star weak foot on the right side. So I don't just want to have to always cut to the left. Although he would be there, especially if you hold that player a little more with holding like a false 9 instead of a striker, right? But with that being said, how I use that second player, which sometimes there may be games where I go tweak it and have that player more holding up, but initially how I do it is have him as a second striker. And you'll see here some of my different settings, or 2 of them I should say, for 4-4-1-1 and 4-2-3-1 wide. The only reason you see these differences between the two, you can literally use both of these and interchange these settings, but I'm mainly going to go over my more balanced one. This attacking one is more for games where I'm down a goal, and I'd probably change that to, instead of pressure after possession loss, to constant pressure. For now, though, it's more like I'm dominating my opponent, but they're either parking the bus or I just can't seem to break in to their box or create chances, but I'm dominating, so I'll go a little more pressure oriented, just because I know defensively I won't have to worry about it as much. Because when you go either pressure after possession loss and especially constant pressure, your shape is risked, right? Your players will start pressuring more and not worry about the shape, and a good opponent especially, but even a decent opponent, can exploit those holes in your defense, so you have to be careful there. So just choose the defensive style that fits you. For me, pressure on heavy touch. For my more balanced formation, for my more attacking, I go press after possession loss. Simple as that. And if you need to go real bad, and one pressure, the most pressure, obviously constant pressure. Depth of defense, I just go with a balanced 6 there. No other reason than I found it to be a good depth where I'm not getting over the top, through balls, getting past my defenders, and I'm also high enough up to feel comfortable. So that's another one you need to tweak to fit your play style. But if you want, you could start from 6, balance 6 setup. It's will be perfectly fine to just start and adjust from there. Width of defense, I go again with a balance 5. Same idea. I like the spacing when my defender is on that 5 width of defense. I'm able to manually switch them as I like and move them accordingly, blocking passing lanes and dribbling lanes. Um, Going into attacking style, I choose fast attack or long ball each time. I don't know much of a difference, but just based on the theory of, how it explains it, the difference would be fast attacks, just more numbers moving quicker forward, whereas long ball, they use different words, but it's basically numbers getting up quick, but it's just less numbers. So right when you win the ball, you're going to have in fast attack, let's say your front 4 and then like one midfielder that's more pushed up. But then you have your duties that counteract that too. So typically I'll go long ball just because the wording matches more what my players, who I want moving in the attack. However, I used to always go fast attack, and then I realized, like, well, my duties have my 2 CMs or CDMs, whichever one they are, and whichever formation you use out of the 4 that these settings connect to. Their duties are set to hold them back anyways. So that's why I went back to fast attack. But they're pretty much the same, I believe, and that's what I see in game. And I've told you that in the past. But if you see a little difference or prefer one, you can, and absolutely you can go balance if you want to on that attacking style too. Totally up to you and your play style. Players in the box, if you know me or see my other videos, I always go with this 6, and it's just because out of my 4 set, corner kick set plays, it's just a good setting for that. By the way, those 4 settings are corner kick plays I use. The near post flick on, far post flick on, and then just both of the runs, near post and far post with Holland. They're both viable, but just don't expect to just score them as highly as you were before. They absolutely nerfed it, so it's not you're scoring every single time, right? Now, the last but not least, my width of attack. You see for my balance, 1 to 4-4-1-1, I have all the way narrow, and then you'll see my more attacking, I have almost all the way up as far as having it in a wide setting for my width of attack. That's for me simply because for my balance formation, I want my 2 wing mids, or even if it's a 4-2-3-1, which is why I like narrow, I want my wing mids tucked in more. And that's why I would go, like I said earlier, to the 4-2-3-1 narrow, and I will be doing that once. Someone that can play the cam role is because it's just their starting position is a little more, it's naturally just starting a little closer to where I want them in game, right? So you might want them all the way out wide. It depends how you play, right? You could want them all the way out wide running diagonally in. I like my those 2 outside players working in between the wing backs and the center backs in those seams, and having that narrow width of attack helps that. The only reason I have it wide for my attacking version is because if my opponent's trying to keep the ball and they're up by a goal or something, I need my wingers to immediately put pressure on the opposition. Almost always they're going to be going to their wing backs to get out of pressure. And if you're too narrow, you don't have those attackers closer to the width, if you lose the ball or trying to win it back from an opponent keeping it, you'll have a harder time. So that's the only reason I go out wide. Typically speaking, though, I like it narrow so my wingers are working in between those seams between the center backs and wing backs. Goalkeeper, going to the duties, by the way, as you can see. Again, same for all 4 formations. It doesn't matter if it says CDM or CM. It doesn't matter if it says striker or cam. Those are the only differences between either the 4-4-1-1s or either the 4-2-3-1s. But the goalkeeper's always on passive balance. Don't want them running out, giving up goals because they, came out when they shouldn't have. So passive and balance. Wing backs. One big change on this. Everything else is the same. Attacking width is balanced. You can have that close to the sideline like I do in my attacking setup, right? And then the big change, right? The attacking support is under support the attack now. I used to always put it as the most defensive one. I think it was like hold your position or don't cross the halfway line. That's what it was. The reason why I did that is because before this patch, the wingbacks would kind of run way out of position. They'd be way out of where you needed them to recover after you attacked. Now that they essentially, I guess you could say, buffed support the attack so they wouldn't just run wild, almost like attacking runs. Now they're just pushed up a little bit and they do provide a better passing option in the attack, but are disciplined enough to stay somewhat in the shape so they can get back and help defensively. So I go with balance, attacking width, attacking support the attack. Defensive styles, holding position, I guess. And then pass interceptions, always situational. That never changes. So for me, these are pretty much mandatory. You could still do don't cross the halfway line for your wingbacks, but I will say that it is nice sometimes having them as a passing option, but now they just don't run crazy like they used to before, they were buffed. So, moving on to the midfielders now. Whether they're CMs or CDMs, my two central players always on the most defensive setting, okay? Which is don't cross the halfway line for attacking support, hold your position for crosses in the box. We don't want them getting up in the box. And then pass interceptions is situational for every player. Now, you may want one or both getting up in the box, depending on if you want this more attacking or neutral. I don't find it necessary to send either one of them up into the box for crosses because it just means that then if the opponent wins the ball, if and when, right, you just have a player out of position that's going to take some time for him to run back and recover. And it could cost you, especially against a better opponent. So I just keep those two CMs or CDMs, whichever one it is, in the most defensive setup. Now moving to that central player, very important in any of these four setups. It's a striker and some a cam in the others. On both of them, I have attacking runs and stay up front, okay? And then, of course, the last one's situational like it is for all players. But the reason why I have attacking style, attacking runs, and attacking width stay up front for that middle cam or striker is because the runs that player makes past the striker are brilliant. It's always nice when you have the ball and they're just focused on not letting you get into Holland's feet, and here comes Son or whichever player you have in the middle darting in. You can play usually a nice through ball or to their feet to then either keep dribbling or cut to an angle and get a finesse shot, which, by the way, Son's brilliant at. So there are games, though, where I may pause and I may switch that to more of a holding role, like an attacking midfielder false nine role, because sometimes that's just a good passing option. Then from there, you can either dribble or swing the ball out wide instead of having that player making darting runs into the attack. He still can receive it in that more of a holding attacking role, but he'll just make way more runs when you have him on attacking runs to stay up front. And the same with your striker. You want him on attacking style, attacking runs, defensive support, stay up front, pass interceptions, obviously situational. Reason being, you can always manually pull him towards you or have him come to, I should say. But for the most part, I want him stretching the defense, making attacking runs. In this new post-patch meta, those L1 triangle through balls to the striker are viable if you time it right. They're not OP to where you just press it and your striker's through. You have to time it right or the defender will win it. But I'm just telling you, they are on, so look for those, right? You'll see when the timing's right, and of course, practice makes perfect. But aside from that, the last two players we have is our two wingers, or if you're in the 4-2-3-1 narrow right away, the two cams. And that, for me, would be Mbappe on the left, Messi on the right. And for them, in attacking style is attacking runs. Attacking width is close to the middle, right? For you, it might be balance or wide. But as I said earlier, I like them playing those seams between the center backs and wing back. And I found with the most narrow setup and close to the middle is best for these. It may be a little more narrow for 4-2-3-1, the regular setup, the more narrow setup where they're cams. So you may have to look at that and tweak that. But if you want them as narrow as me, go with the most narrow width as far as width of attack, which I showed you in tactics. Okay, and then for attacking style, go with attacking runs, attacking width, close to the middle, and you'll get them in the seams where I use them. Then crosses in the box, of course, make yourself available for both wingers. Defensive support for both, stay up front, right? I don't want my left or right guys coming back. You may want that. I did try it on bounce a little bit, but I found when I won the ball, it was better when they were pushed further up. And then, of course, pass interceptions is situational, and that will give you a very solid front four to start your attack with. As usual, though, there are some areas you might want them wider. Might want them balanced. You might want them coming all the way back where it's dropped back. You might want that balance as well as far as their defensive support. You might want that middle guy on the attacking mids, more holding spot, not as a second striker. You might even want your striker always showing too, so you do short pass. I mean, there's a ton of different ways you can tweak this. So I always stress this. Do not just copy and paste mine and just leave it at that. Go practice, tweak each of the settings like I explained in more detail earlier. I don't want to just keep going and going, but it's so important that you don't just copy and paste. You actually understand the settings I use and what I'm going for, and then you tweak the settings tactically and duties to what you're going for. So let's get into some of these highlights so we can see how this breaks down. And the first thing I want you to notice is the passing options in the attack. And remember, my CMs or CDMs, whichever one you use, are in the most defensive setting. But you see there, Camavinga becomes the option and ends up being pretty much the setup man for the goal. It should have been a Holland finish goal. He makes a great save. Son's there to bury the rebound. But you've seen there, Camavinga, he's in the most defensive setting, but he's still going to be there as a passing option. And not only that, but you see how important that cam roll is. You either have to play one of these settings with a cam and then a striker in front of them, or you would have to go with something with a 4-1-2-1-2 wide or something like that. You could go narrow, but the whole thing is you have to have players that fit the positions, right? And the beauty of this formation is you have Son there in the middle, whoever would be your cam/second striker, as a passing option for both your wingers or your striker to lay back to, right? Then you have your wingers that can absolutely dominate on the wing, or just at least be an option to either go all the way out wide and isolate the defender, or cut in towards the goal. They're both viable options. Maybe you're a big time dribbler. You got a guy like Vinicius on the outside. You're constantly wanting to isolate wing backs and go at them and dribble towards the middle, right? Or maybe you're a guy like me that more looks like your wingers is they're going to cut in and be scoring options, right? Simple as that. That's how I look at it. As far as build-up goes, I just want you to see here exactly how it looks. Even if you can't see all the players, you can look down on the mini-map. And you should see that this formation offers a dynamic attacking opportunity because there's just so many different options as far as the attacking goes. And then defensively, it offers just a solid defensive setup where you can back press with either your two CMs or your two CDMs. The only difference is just depending on their starting point and how much you have to, tweak them when you're manually switching between them. It's a little more getting back into, position if you have CMs. If it's CDMs, they're a little more, just in the right spot naturally to start off, defense of your goal. So the pressure that those two apply, their ability to close on players, possibly intercept the ball or make a tackle, is very, very important for the strength of your defense. So the offense, you've seen all the options there. You're able to score some beautiful goals with this formation, especially as you start utilizing your cam more, which I'm still getting used to, right? Because I played for such a long time without a cam. But in this post-patch setup, when you're passing and moving and looking for little holes, that cam comes in handy so many times. Not to mention, it's nice to see Camavinga like in the goal that you saw previously. He actually is in a good position too. So if you ever need that more of an outlet pass, or you just as a decoy to get some of the pressure off of for me it would be Son, for you whichever cam or striker you have there. Because once they realize you're going through them a lot, they're going to start right when you get the ball manually defending him. And then having a midfielder with the ability, like a Camavinga, to kind of play that decoy or, move a little forward and help in the attack since there's so much pressure on your cam or striker in the middle. It just helps a ton, man. It's just, very, very dynamic as far as any of these, the 4-4-1-1 either option, the 4-2-3-1 either option. So give it a go, right? Test out if you want to start with my settings as a base, but just make sure you test it out thoroughly and tweak both the tactics and duties to your liking. So, with that being said, we essentially just covered four formations: 4-4-1-1, 4-4-1-1 midfield, 4-2-3-1 narrow, 4-2-3-1 wide. Or in the game, it's just 4-2-3-1 and nothing else, and then 4-2-3-1 wide, which I'm sure you can figure it out. But nonetheless, have a great day. Keep grinding. Have fun. And we will see you next time.